Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to this webinar about doing business in Sudan, organized by the Netherlands African Business Council. It's a beautiful day here in The Hague, Prinsjesdag, third Tuesday of September. And today we're going to be discussing doing business in Sudan. My name is Arne Doornebal. I'm the moderator of today. I work with the Netherlands African Business Council. This webinar is part of a series of webinars, all of them giving information about doing business in the countries that are important to Nabc. And even though Sudan is not among the 15 countries that have been shortlisted by the Dutch private sector as a focus country, we as Nabc do believe that there's a lot of business potential in the country, and that is why we're hosting this webinar today. We're joined by two high-ranking officials this morning. There is His Excellency Kamal Bashir Ahmed Mohamed Khair, Ambassador of Sudan to the Netherlands. Welcome, sir. And from the Dutch Embassy in Khartoum, we're joined by Mr. Sjoerd Smit, who is the Deputy Ambassador of the Netherlands in Sudan. And later in this webinar, we will hear the story of Dutch company Stet Holland BV, active in the seed potato business, about doing business in Sudan. And we start by giving a brief introduction about Nabc's involvement in Sudan in the past years. About 3 years ago, we held a round table about doing business in Sudan, and a couple of years before that, there was a trade mission to Sudan. In 2018, we were making preparations because we had been in touch with the Embassy of Sudan, and there was a wish to organize a new trade mission to the country. But unfortunately, we didn't reach the required number of participants, so therefore we couldn't go. Personally, I traveled to Khartoum to make some preliminary contacts there for the mission, and also later we did do some personal matchmaking between the participants, the people who wanted to go, and some of the companies in Sudan, so that without actually going as a group, they could still proceed doing their business there. But the unclarity about the sanctions and the continued fear that banks have for transactions that have to do with Sudan, they do have an impact on the entrepreneurs, we noticed. Even for today's webinar, we noticed that certain members were not very eager to speak in front of others about the way they're doing business with Sudan. One of our members, an experienced entrepreneur who has traveled to Sudan dozens of times in the past 3 decades, actually said that the country is of so much interest for him that, yeah, he wasn't really willing to share his experience with other potential competitors. So that does mean there is a lot of business interest for Sudan. He also said, and I'm allowed to quote him, doing business with Sudan is extremely rewarding, but it does take a lot of time and effort to build a good network there. Like in many other countries in the region, doing business is based on trust, personally getting to know your business partner, also his or her relatives. So the advice is invest enough time and don't think you can be in for a quick deal. You know, also the current times we live in, Zoom meetings, etc., it's not very likely you make a very big business deal through a virtual meeting. Eventually you do have to find a way to come on the ground and really interact with the people. The same entrepreneur I mentioned also gave some advice about banking issues, and also the other entrepreneur of Stet Holland will later mention the topic. So please stay tuned. Basically, there are ways to work around with the current restrictions that are there because of the banks. If the Americans banks or the European banks with interest in the US are having issues with Sudan for political reasons, then there are obvious other options, like working with banks, which are based in the Middle East, for example. The big question on Sudan is, of course, whether their issues with the United States can eventually be resolved, so the normalization of financial exchanges is on the table again. We hope to get more insights on that from the two ambassadors who are with us today. Finally, I would like to mention that one of the ministers of the Sudanese transitional government, His Excellency Sidik Kafi Aburas, he was visiting us at the Nabc office in January this year, and we as Nabc were very honored to receive him here and to talk with him about the possibilities of future cooperation. On Thursday, we read some alarming news about the Sudanese economy, a story by Reuters press agency saying that Sudan had declared an economic state of emergency over the record high inflation. So we have enough to talk about this morning, and we're hope to seek the views of the ambassadors with us today. Let me now invite His Excellency Kamal Bashir Ahmed Mohamed Khair for his opening remarks of this webinar. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, allow me, chairperson, my dear friend, Mr. Arne Doornebal, to extend my special thanks and appreciation to the Netherlands Africa Business Council for their tireless effort and continuous cooperation with the embassy, and also for organizing this very important and timely event on business opportunities in my country and making it reality today, and first for honoring me with this opportunity. We believe that the Netherlands is a very important country for Sudan. And therefore, and also further, we believe that the Dutch private sector has a prominent role to play in the sustainable development, sustainable economic development in Africa as a whole, and in Sudan in particular. I recognize and acknowledge that the business, this Netherlands Africa Business Council cooperated very importantly during the last years with embassy, and they conducted number of round tables and also visits Sudan, and it was really very much appreciated by our people and our government. I would also like to extend my thanks and appreciation to all participants for making their effort and taking part in this webinar. I understand my dear friend Sjoerd Smit, who did excellent job during the last 3 years at the Dutch Embassy in Khartoum, will enrich also our discussion during this webinar. Also, I would like to welcome Mr. Henk Holtslag, who will also be having very important insight and contribution. More than 1 year ago, the world watched with admiration as the Sudanese women, youth, and men peacefully opened a new page in the history of Sudan based on the ideals of freedom, peace, and justice. This historical paradigm shift tasked the civilian-led government, transitional government, with indispensable reform and restructuring. On its path through democratic transition, the new government is extending a hand of partnership with friends to join, overcome different challenges. International political and financial assistance would hopefully complement our nation's effort aimed at reforming and revitalizing the economy. Prime Minister Dr. Abdullah Hamdok has outlined that the priority of his government represented in realization of urgent demand and dreams of people, including the economic stability and making peace and conditions for the sustainable democracy. The objective of peace has already been realized when Sudan government signed a historical peace agreement with Sudan Revolutionary Front on 31st of August 2020. It is just 2 weeks ago, starting a new chapter for the country. In addition to that, also Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok carried out successful talks with other factions of leaders of Sudanese People Liberation Movement, SPLM, North Abdulaziz al-Hili, just last week. All these developments also giving us hope that peace will prevail in Sudan as soon as possible. In addition to that, during the high-level Sudan Partnership Conference, co-hosted by Germany, the European Union, and the United Nations, and Sudan in Berlin on 25th of June, the international community pledged to support Sudan's economic reform. The conference was considered as a starting point to launch a process for international partners to render political and financial support for the ongoing transition in Sudan, open a gateway for Sudan's re-engagement with the international community. This conference opened a new chapter in the cooperation between Sudan and the international community to rebuild the country, especially agricultural sector, noting that Sudan's agricultural land mass is as large as of France, with potential to become Africa's breadbasket. The participating countries agreed to hold next partnership conference in early 2020 in close collaboration with the government of Sudan and Friends of Sudan group. It's worth mentioning that the Sudan Friends Forum, which is hosted also by Saudi Arabia, also held in Riyadh last August through video conference for the same purpose. It is also worth mentioning that the government or Dutch government and Netherlands is also a member of these Friends of Sudan. This is also very good, and already Netherlands took part during the last December in Sudan. Ambassador Darhout took part in that, he participated in that meeting. This is also giving us hope for more cooperation with the Netherlands. The country has more than 140 million acres of arable land, more than 130 million heads of livestock, abundant water resources, diversity in climate change, that enables the cultivation of different crops, and experienced human capital in the field of agriculture. All these factors make Sudan one of the few countries that can contribute substantially to the fight against hunger in the world. Sudan presents itself in the upcoming era as elements of regional and international stability, as a land of great opportunity and unlimited capabilities for producing food, as it has abundant fertile land, water, and human resources. Of course, our people are very young, with under 30 age group that represent 61.7% of the population. Sudan is the third largest African country in terms of size. I think 1,886,000 million kilometers square, sharing borders with 7 countries in addition to Red Sea. That means we have more than maybe 350 to 4 million people, 100 million people around us. That means when any kind of industry, manufacturing, trade, or whatever, everything would be feasible when our colleagues and our friends from the Dutch government and private sector come and invest in Sudan. That means also marketing will be in surrounding, and also very rich Gulf countries are also around us. This also will give us very big hope also to receive investors from the Netherlands. The main geographical feature of Sudan is also River Nile, as you know, also including Adbara, Blue Nile, and the White Nile River, traverses the country south to the North Mountain in east and part of its western region. In Sudan, climate varies from the equatorial in its most southern part, savanna in the center, and the continental in the north parts, while the eastern part of Sudan is coastal plain. It rains in winter and period from June to August. From March to May, resumes it is extreme dry heat up to 42 degrees Celsius at daytime and 27 degrees Celsius at night. But temperature gradually declines when it starts raining from July to October.
So thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. We're also joined by Mr. Sjoerd Smit from Khartoum. The last 4 years, the Dutch ambassador in Sudan was Ambassador Khair Bovens. He has left the country after 4 years. He will be replaced by Ambassador Van Buren. In the meanwhile, Mr. Sjoerd Smit has been taking care of the Dutch embassy there as the deputy ambassador. Welcome, Mr. Sjoerd Smit.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sjoerd Smit, indeed currently Chargé d'Affaires of the Netherlands Embassy in Khartoum, and it's a great pleasure and an honor for me to be part of this forum, and a big first start me to congratulate the Netherlands African Business Council on doing this timely webinar on business opportunities in Sudan, and particularly for Dutch companies. And I'm also very honored to be in this forum with Ambassador Kamal, Bashir, good morning to you. Yeah, I hope that we're able to answer the questions that are there. But first of all, let me start with just an overview of our bilateral relations. I think we're one of the first countries after the independence of Sudan in '56 to come here. We set up our embassy, officially opened it in '58, and ever since the relationships have been very strong. Though there has been, of course, been times that we didn't agree as much as we currently do. So we're riding a high wave, which is very positive, and it comes with new dynamism and opportunities. Some examples of that after the tremendous changes of the December Revolution that started in 2019. We have the presence of our Minister of Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation, Minister Khair, who came here in February this year, also to discuss, among others, some economic opportunities, in particular in private sector development. This year we also had our bilateral consultations at Director General level, and we're looking forward to continue to do this, as it is very important that we all as governments, but also together with companies, with academia, with international organizations, make sure that we are setting the right objectives and actually can contribute to both sustainable economic development here in Sudan, but also it's in strengthening the mutual bilateral relations as we have them. Now, maybe briefly on how we experience the political changes here. It's already referred to Excellency Mr. Bashir, Ambassador of Sudan to the Netherlands. It's been very amazing to witness this peaceful protest and this positive change in a peaceful manner that has brought about now this new configuration that we have the interim period here in Sudan with Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok at the head of the government overseeing the cabinet, and then there's the Sovereign Council, which is a mixture of both military and civilian aspects, and the Sovereign Council as such is taking the place as a head of state. Yeah, it's not a cakewalk in terms of the transition. There are still some challenges ahead, but I think a very important step, as also Ambassador Bashir mentioned, is that we have witnessed now the first paraphing and hopefully at the beginning of October, the official signing of the peace agreement between 5 movements that were in armed opposition to the previous government. We also hope that the 2 ones that are not yet fully on board will also be on board in order to make sure that the fundaments are there for a peaceful and a prosperous Sudan. Maybe to mention a little bit what we're focused on as the Netherlands Embassy. We're having many roles, so we're contributing, of course, to the democratic transformation that is taking place. Also, Sudan has been plagued by many humanitarian scourges, and the COVID is one of them. Also, unfortunately, the Nile and the rainfalls have reached a historical record, and that also that actually led to some extra households, about 750,000 people that are now affected by this floods that are not only directly on the Nile, but also due to torrential rains in other areas. So we're helping Sudan out on that, as well as looking at, of course, at economic development. And I think that is the most interesting topic for us around the digital table today. I think today is an important day for the Netherlands Embassy because despite COVID restrictions, we've been able to welcome first delegation since a long time from the Netherlands on business. It's a combination of a company that is working on sourcing of, among others, Scrum Arabic, together with a company that is doing venture capital, so looking for investment opportunities here. Sudan very much needs that because as Arne already mentioned, last Thursday, the economic state of emergency was declared because of a tailspin development in the Sudanese pound when you compare it to the dollar or to the euro, and that is causing some trouble. I think this month will be a very important month and a decisive month on macroeconomic reforms. The IMF will decide officially to get the official start of the staff monitored program that is looking to assist Sudan in conducting its macroeconomic reforms. Now, a couple of those areas that will be touched upon are the unification of the different rates, exchange rates that are being used for import, for example, also for bank rates. Another one is broadening the taxation base, which is very much needed also for the government to be able to be active in implementing its policies. And we're very confident that this assistance of the IMF will assist Sudan in this difficult road. Now, these at the short term, these reforms will bite the Sudanese population in terms of some hikes in prices. So in Berlin, late June, it was decided that the family support program, which is implemented by the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning with the assistance of the World Bank, will start this month in order to ensure that the needy part of the population will be assisted financially to cope through this difficult times where economic changes and economic reforms need to be made. So we're very happy that we can also contribute to that as the Netherlands and as a friend of Sudan, as rightfully mentioned by Ambassador Kamal Bashir. We're very fond and very proud of being a friend of Sudan, and we try to be helpful in any kind of way to make sure that this once upon a generation change that is taking place in Sudan will result in a sustainable, prosperous and peaceful Sudan. And lastly, I would like to mention the connection to the agricultural sector. There's many economic opportunities here in Sudan, but the agricultural sector, and for the time being, is really the backbone of the economy. And I think it's due, and the Sudanese government is taking the lead in that as well, to make sure that it is actually providing the Sudanese with opportunities to get a living, and to make sure that the productive capacity of the agricultural sector is enhanced. And that is not only the export, lock, stock, barrel of the commodities, but also looking into opportunities together with maybe Dutch companies, other investors, to see if we can also further up the value chain, assist in a spin-off of economic activity. Now, the number of the Netherlands exports to Sudan it's roughly $70 million last year. There's lots of scope for increasing that, but one of the main challenges before we get to the Q&A is the financial aspects of doing business with Sudan. As long as Sudan is still listed on the state-sponsored of terrorism list of the United States, which is posing trouble. As far as I understand, but I think Ambassador Bashir is much more placed to give an update on that, perhaps. But negotiations are already in a very far face between the government of Sudan and the United States and they're actually at quite at a detailed level now. Still, seeing is believing, and as for the Dutch government, we are asking also our American friends to actually, with immediate effect, release Sudan from that list, as it is, well, a huge burden and a difficult obstacle for economic development in Sudan. I would like to leave it here, and I'm very eager to hear your questions that you might have, particularly to the Dutch embassy, and I'm very willing and happy to answer those. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smit. Indeed, great to hear that the Netherlands is also actively involved in talking to the United States to see whether those sanctions can be removed. At least Sudan could be taken off that list. Before we go to the Q&A, we are going to hear from an entrepreneur. The Dutch company Stet Holland BV is very active in Sudan. They are dealing in seed potatoes. I visited their office in Emmeloord, which is considered the potato capital of the world, as they call it there. And I spoke to the manager fresh, Mr. Henk Holtslag, and I also filmed the potato farm of one of the companies which supplies potatoes to them. So just to be clear, the images you see in the video are from Flevoland, not from Sudan. Let's have a look at the experiences of Mr. Holtslag.
My name is Henk Holtslag. I'm manager fresh in the company Stet. Stet is a company based in Emmeloord, the center of Holland, and we call it the city of potato because of many companies are based in Emmeloord, and a lot of companies in machineries, in seeds, in fertilizers. Also the Nabc is based in Emmeloord, so that's why Stet is in Emmeloord. I'm working in the company for 20 years, and I am started as an export manager for countries in Africa, North Africa, Middle East, and that's why I'm working in Sudan. I've been in the country several times and built up a good business for the company. Yeah, we are a company only in seed potatoes. That means we are breeding varieties which are suitable for our markets. And as I said, our main markets is countries in the hot climates, so North Africa, Middle East, the south of Europe, all the countries around the Mediterranean. So for North Africa, they need another type of variety or potato compared to South Europe, and the same is a little bit also in the Middle East. So we are breeding varieties suitable for the market, but also good for our growers, because that is variety need to be good for the market, color, shape, taste, all these kind of things. But we need also producers from the rare crops that they have a good yield and have enough resistances to diseases. And the same is for the seed growers. Our seed growers are mainly in Holland, but also in France, in Denmark, Scotland we have seed producers. So it's breeding, it's production of seed potatoes, and we do the marketing. So we have once we have breeded a variety, we need to introduce it and to sell it, of course. And for this we need to produce the seeds together with contracted farmers. And the marketing is introduction, which takes about 4 or 5 years. The breeding of a variety is about 10 years. So after, let's say, 15 years, we have created some volume for sales and to market it. And then, then we can continue increasing the volumes and increasing our markets. When I started in the company in 2000, one of the first countries I've visited was Sudan. For me, a new experience, because I have not been outside Europe in that time, and it was the first visit to Africa for me. It's a very, very interesting country to be, completely different from, let's say, Middle East countries. It's an African country, poor country with a lot of restrictions, but also a lot of possibilities. Very nice people. A country with a lot of opportunities and a lot of restrictions, and that's the way you have to deal with it. They consume potatoes a lot, but they are very expensive. Potatoes are very expensive in Sudan, and because the production is difficult, a big part is produced along the border of the Nile. And since I think 10 years ago, they started production in the desert with irrigation systems. We call it pivots. That is a system which is covering an acreage of 50 hectares, turning around and easy to manage with less people. So that is the big scale farming which has started up. And on the border of the Nile, it's still very traditional. In that part, they produce the potatoes in the same way as they did 20 years ago. So with new varieties which we introduced, we have seen much better results, increase of yields, better security of potatoes, let's say less damage in the field, less damage in the warehouses, because that's where you see also many problems, that potatoes at harvest time, they are always low in price because everybody is harvesting and want to sell it. So who are the companies and the people who made the money? That are the owners of the cold stores. So they invested in cold stores a lot, and they take it from the farmers at low price, or they rent it, and after half year they can sell the product. So they need good varieties which can be kept in storage for, let's say, for half a year without losing quality. And in the past they were storing the product in the fields, kind of pit they call it. You can keep it for a small period, and there's a lot of loss of product. So that's a change in the market, and the second change is that they are using more machineries. So once you use more machineries, and once you store it in cold stores, you need also other type of potato, and that's why our varieties are doing well, and have helped them to make this change to the machineries and the cold stores. If you look to seed potato, we are exporting about 7,000 tons a year. I think the total market of seed potatoes is 50,000 tons maybe. So there's a big potential. But a lot is produced by local seed production, which is not certified. But a potato you can plant it, and you can plant it next time again and again. So you can maintain the crop for a long period. But of course the yields are going down because the variety is degenerating with virus, with disease, and then the quality is going down. I remember well when we started in Sudan, it was all the banks were working and accepting payments from Sudan. We could work easily with letter of credits, bank guarantees, that kind of things. Also the local currency was related to the US dollar of much better value than nowadays. Due to all the sanctions from America, many banks cannot accept any payment from Sudan anymore. They cannot accept any letter of credit from Sudan or any document or payment related to Sudan. So that makes it very, very difficult to do the business, because if you cannot receive payments, then nobody will be interested to do business. So that's not so easy to solve it. So what we do in fact is to work with companies in other countries, or if a customer has a subsidiary in another country or a branch or what else, then to work through these companies. So a company should open a bank account in Dubai or in Saudi or another country, which is an independent company more or less, And from that company, we can accept payments and letter of credits. It's a country, especially in agriculture, which has a very high potential. It's a country with, it's a big country in acreage. It has a lot of water available, and that is the most important thing and a great benefit from Sudan if you compare it to some other countries like Egypt or like Saudi. That gives them for the future a high potential. But the problem is, for the time being, the politics. But fortunately, last year there was a change in government, or early this year. And it looks like that they are now making good steps forward, political-wise. And that on short term, the sanctions could be stopped, maybe. This kind of developments might help the country a lot to develop them and to get a better political climate around. And we can all profit from it. I think we need Sudan also for the region to be the a big production site for the people for food.
Thank you very much, all of you. Have a great day, and we're looking forward to see you again at one of the other NABC webinars. Thank you and goodbye.